All right, let's talk about something called single session therapy, or SST. It's this really powerful and honestly super focused way of looking at mental health. The whole thing is built on this simple but kind of radical idea. You don't always need to sign up for a long-term thing to make a real change. Sometimes, believe it or not, all it takes is 1 hour. So let's just dive right into that. When we think therapy, our minds usually go to weekly sessions that can stretch on for months, maybe even years. But what if that's just one version of the story? SST really challenges that by asking this game-changing question. What if just one really focused, collaborative hour is all you need to get the ball rolling, to kind of shift your whole perspective, and to walk out with a plan to actually move forward? Now, to be super clear, this isn't about some brand new flashy technique. It's actually much deeper than that. It's about a total shift in mindset. One of the pioneers of this whole approach said that training for SST is it's more about getting a certain attitude than it is about learning a bunch of new tricks. It's all about rethinking what's possible in that single hour. Okay, so on the one hand, most of us see therapy as this long-term journey where you dig deep into all your problems. But the single session mindset? It just flips that whole script. The idea is to treat every single meeting as if it might be the only one, to make it a complete, valuable experience in and of itself that's focused not on what's wrong, but on what's already right with you. And this is what I love about it. This mindset puts you, the client, squarely in the driver's seat. It all starts with this core belief that you are the expert on your own life. You already have the strengths, you already have the resources, even if you can't quite see them right now. So the therapist's job isn't to come in and fix you, it's to be a collaborator, to help you find and use those strengths to get yourself moving. These attitudes, which are inspired by the work of Moshe Talman, are pretty much the engine that makes SST run. And do you notice the theme here? This is it. The power is in the patient. Expect change. It's all about immediacy and empowerment. The therapist basically trusts that you've got this, and they believe that change doesn't start in the session. No, it was already happening before you even walked in the door. A really helpful way to picture how this all works is to think of it like a 3-act play. So, Act 1 is all about setting the stage. This is where the therapist's main job is to build a solid foundation of hope and create a really positive alliance right from the jump. This is the heart and soul of Act 1. Instead of jumping right into a big checklist of all your problems, the therapist is listening for your strengths, your skills. If you're a knitter, a scarf starts with a single stitch. If you're a gamer, you have to level up one step at a time. The session starts by building this belief that what's right with you is way more powerful than what's wrong. Okay, so this number, 40%, is absolutely huge. Research shows that the therapeutic alliance, that feeling that you and the therapist are a team, that you're working together, that alone accounts for about 40% of what makes therapy successful. That's why building it fast and making it genuine is so important in SST. It's not just a nice little formality, it's the bedrock for everything that follows. And just look at how this mindset changes something as basic as explaining confidentiality. On the left, you've got that formal, kind of legal-sounding version. But on the right, it's humane, it's conversational. That second one isn't just spitting out information, it's building trust. It shows the therapist is actually concerned about your safety, not just checking a box. It's a tiny shift in words, but it has a massive impact. Ooh, this is such a powerful question. It taps into this idea of pre-session change. Just the act of deciding to get help, that's a huge step. And it often brings a little bit of relief and hope all on its own. By asking this, the therapist is basically saying, hey, look, change is already happening. It builds momentum before you even get to the nuts and bolts of the problem. And that brings us to Act 2, the turning point. This is where the whole story really shifts. See, a client often comes in feeling like they're staring at this giant, overwhelming mountain of problems. The goal of this act is to work together to turn that huge mountain into one single actionable step you can take. This piece of wisdom from the legendary therapist Jay Haley, it's pretty much the guiding rule for Act 2. Someone might come in saying, my problem is I have borderline personality disorder. Or maybe just, I'm unhappy. Well, those are kind of unsolvable labels, right? The therapist's job is to negotiate with the client and find a concrete, solvable goal that lives inside that bigger feeling. So how do you actually do that? This table shows it perfectly. Instead of trying to, get rid of anxiety or depression in 1 hour, which is impossible, you break it down. Can we maybe reduce the frequency of a negative thought? Just have one less today. Can we shorten the duration of a panic attack? Maybe just by 1 minute. Can we knock the intensity of an angry outburst from an 8 out of 10 down to a 7? See, these are small, they're concrete, and they're totally achievable. And this really gets to the core of the whole strategy. SST therapists think small because that's what creates big change. They help clients go from this vague feeling of unhappiness to a specific behavioral goal. The point isn't to solve the whole puzzle at once, but to leave with a very clear first step that you both created together. Asking a question just like this is how the therapist helps you nail down that first step. It shifts the entire focus from the problem in the past to a result you can see in the future. What will you do differently? What would your boss or your partner or your friend actually see that would tell them something's changed for you? This makes the change feel real and measurable. And that leads us to the grand finale, Act 3, the next step. So after you've found a solvable goal, the therapist's job is to wrap up all the progress from the session and help the client write a new ending to their story, or really a new beginning for whatever comes next. So the closing has these 3 key ingredients. First, you've got commendations. That's just pointing out all the strengths and resources the client has. Second, you make a concrete plan together, maybe an experiment to try. And third, you get feedback and make it crystal clear that the door is always open if and when the client decides they want to come back. And this right here gets to the real power of those commendations. Think about it. You usually leave a doctor's office with a diagnosis, right? A label for what's wrong. In SST, the goal is for you to leave with a report of your strengths. The therapist literally lists out the resilience, the courage, the resources they saw in you during that hour. For a lot of people, this is the most powerful part of the whole thing. It builds the confidence you need to keep going on your own. So what's the takeaway? What does a client actually walk away with after a really good single session? Well, it's not just some quick fix. It's a whole new experience of what therapy can be. And really, a new experience of themselves. You leave feeling like you were truly heard and understood. You walk out with more hope and less stress. You have this new awareness of what you're capable of, a totally new way to think about your situation, a real concrete plan for what to do next, and, this is so important, a positive experience with therapy. That last part makes sure that if you ever need help again, you'll be much more likely to go get it. This quote just perfectly sums up the whole spirit of single-session therapy. It's not about the therapist having all the answers, not at all. It's about recognizing the incredible potential for change that's sitting right there inside a single, focused, collaborative hour, and then trusting that the client is more than capable of taking it from there. So ultimately, this whole approach really casts you as the hero of your own 3-act play. So we'll just leave you with this to think about. If you had just 1 hour to start rewriting your own story, what would your first line be? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.